Good evening, my Rabbi Chaim. Tonight, Zera Shimshon Shir is being sponsored by Rabbi Chaim Kanievski ben Leah Meira. Another sponsor is a schus for Klal Yisrael. Parnasa berevach ad belidai to Yosef ben Chana Esther Roiza, Meir ben Miriam, Shlomo Yosef ben Rachel, Chaim Hillel ben Karen Tzivia, and Elazar ben Matel. Ben Shem should give all of you Hatzlacha, Gesund, Parnasa, Nachas, from ganz Klal Yisrael. Schus of the Zera Shimshon Chaim ben Menachem Echol. We'll just thank all the people who came tonight and thank Torah anytime for making this shir possible to ganz Klal Yisrael. Page Tov Ayin Aleph, letter Dalet, an amazing Zera Shimshon. We did this Zera Shimshon actually in Tov Ayin Tes, which was about 6 or 7 years ago. But I felt it was such a Geshmaka Zera Shimshon, uniquely Zera Shimshon, I figured we had to do it again. Okay, so if you haven't been here in the last time you were here was 7 years ago, then you heard it. If you haven't been here in the last 7 years, this would be new. Vayakam melech chodosh al Mitzrayim asher lo yada es Yosef. Vayakam melech chodosh al Mitzrayim. And a new king got up. Asher lo yada es Yosef. There's two opinions. One says that truly it was a new person. And others say that no, chodosh means, as Chazal say, Nischadshu Rav Shmuel Chad Omer Nischadshu Gzeiroisov. His Gezeiros were renewed. Nischadshu Gzeiroisov.
New policies.
Lamanda Omer Nischadshu Gzeiroisov. What does it mean? Asher lo yodas Yosef osa atzma kilu lo yod. He made himself like he didn't know him. That's the opinion. Rav and Shmuel, one says it's like he didn't know who he was. The Zera Shimshon asks 4 basic, elementary, simple, poignant questions. He asks like this. Number 1, what does it mean, Nischadshu Gzeiroisov? What does it mean he renewed? What did he do? He made a new Gezeira? That's not called Nischadshu. That's called he made a Gezeira. Maza Meir. Maza Nischadesh. Maza Omer.
It was before.
It was before and he knew to make a new one, right? Maza.
Reinstatement.
Reinstate. Oh, that's a good word. I didn't even think of that.
Also double down maybe.
Right? Ima kavana. Look at the way the Zera Shimshon asks the kasha. Ima kavana loimer she'asa gezeiras chadoshos hepech hayeshaynais. If the pshat is he had new policy, kineged what once was, so he should say asa gezeiras chadoshos. So zug, he made new gezeiras. That's this chadshu gezeirosav. It's a new gezeira. Hey, it's not renewed. The loshen nischadshu gezeiras masha shechidish. It almost sounds like the literal translation is there were gezeiras, they fell by the wayside, and he, as Meir said over here so eloquently, reinstated those gezeiras. Va'ato chidsham v'kosha ma Elu Gezeiras. So what indeed are these Gezeiras? Vusidus. What are these Gezeiras? They were old Gezeiras that fell by the wayside, and now he's mechadish them. Question number 1. What does it mean? Lo yoda osa atzma ki lo yoda. What I don't understand. What do you mean osa atzma lo yoda? Maybe Dilma yodes Yosef v'afa pingos Gezeiras. Rabbi Chaim, if you're the king, you do what you want. You don't have to machsech nicht wissendig. You know what that means?
No.
Make like you don't know. Asher lo yodes Yosef. Oh, I forgot. What do you mean you forgot it? Could you see Trump ever saying that I forgot who this? No, I couldn't care less. Right? Believe me, Paray was as tough as Trump. Ich bin sicher. Right? Paray was just as tough. Okay? So he doesn't have a Koros HaTov. Is Vosi? He's paroi. Off with your head. He's chopping off little kids' heads and bathing in their blood. What you're looking to see that is Rahmanis?
No, that's the point.
Okay.
The
Af al pish kein gozer legezeres lahachis bezodoin ubepesha. Paroi is paroi. So he's a Rosha. He's going to do it. Lahachis, bepesh. What's Ashallah Yodas Yosef? What does he have to say like in Yiddish? Machzich nish wissendik. I don't know who he is. No, machzich nish wissendik means to say, forget about him. What does it help? Oh, Parah is going to, who's Yosef? What do you mean, who's Yosef? Idiot? Who's been taking care of your country for the last years? What do you mean, Ashallah Yoda? So they're all of a sudden going to forget. Everybody knew who he was. What does it help? Ashallah Yoda. You want to say he doesn't remember the good? Fine, maskim. Eliezer, you're also maskim now, Baruch Hashem. Okay, but what is it? Loshen Yediyah, Ashallah Yodas Yosef. What does he want? All these questions, says the Zera Shimshon, has an answer with a major introduction. The Yuvan b'mashekasev asara mamoris. Asara mamoris, one is the Mekubalim, Ramami Pano, who writes as following: Shahashgacha shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu haisam. The hashkach of the Eibishter was Sheyosef yishlat al Mitzrayim koidim sheyishlatu heim al Yisrael. In a preemptive strike against our enemy being Egypt. And before they have a chance to be shoylet on Klal Yisrael, for them to control us, they were already controlled by Yosef. Yosef was not just the leader of the country. In last week's Parsha, when they said, buy us as your servant, Yosef became the owner and the master of all of Mitzrayim, and they became his avodim. What's the halacha when a person owns an eved? Mashekana eved? Kana rabbi. Whatever they have goes to me. So if the Mitzrayim tried to be Meshabed and make the Yidden their avodim, Mashekana eved, Kana rabbi goes back to Yosef. And Yosef has his own kinderlach. So it means that they inherit everything. The ilav hachi, if chas v'shalom this wouldn't have happened, if not for this preemptiveness of Yosef going there, then the Klal Yisrael would have gone, unfortunately, into the 50th level of Tumah. They would never get out. Avo, Ata, Shisholet Yosef Aneim. Now that Yosef was shoylet on them, so Yosef is now the master, and Mitzrayim is what? Avodim loy. They're his servants. Aha! And you got something? Bevakasha, give it to me, please. I'm your master. So whatever you have belongs to me. So therefore, Masha Kana Eved Kana Rabbi. Im Kain Yisrael Nikim Avodim Le Yosef. They're Yosef's, not Mitzrayim. Loy Mitzrayim. So this preemptive measure stops us, even though we say Avodim Hayinu Leparei b'Mitzrayim. But there's a big fat asterisk there. Avodim Hayinu Leparei means that we served them, but they never legally owned us, because Mashakana Eved Kana Rabbi. And since Ubezeh Yotzolanu Tam Loma Niku Yisrael B'Shem Yosef. In Tehillim, the Lama Niku Yosef Roya Yisrael Kedechsiv Roya Yisrael Hazinu Noyeg Kitzoin Yosef. The Eibishter, it brings us, is Noyeg us, Efirt ins, he brings us Tzoin Yosef. Lefi she Yosef Kona Mitzrayim LaAvodim. He was the one who was mashpia. He was the one who owned, so to speak, the Egyptians. They all became his. And therefore, Royu Hulik Raisai Roya Yisrael Veloy Roya HaMitzriyim. Hayol Shazai L'Toivasam Shal Yisrael. I forget about the fact that it was Roya Mitzrayim. That's not important, says David HaMelech in Tehillim. You know what's important? What's important is that he's Roya Yisrael. Like we say so many times, Eile told us Yaakov, Yosef. Thanks to Yosef, there are told us Yaakov. Ob nicht for Yosef, wollt nicht gewähnt, kann told us Yaakov. V'oid, b'shvil shehitzel kol Yisrael she'nitmoim sham lo'olam, rosh shekol Yisrael yikra al shemai. Because he was, if not, as the Zera Shimshon just said, if not for Yosef, if not for the Eibush to be megalgal, that Yosef should go down there as a 17-year-old boy, and Yosef should be at the age of 30, the leader of Mitzrayim, shalach lefonav ish, le'eved nimker Yosef, right? Sholach lefonav isha pasuk in Tehillim. Le'eved nimker Yosef. Says the Medrash on that pasuk. Yosef godar atzmai min ha'erva. V'nigduru kol Yisrael ba'avuroi, or al yadoi, which means when Yosef, for that year that Eishes Potiphar was there to try to seduce him and try to make him do an Aveira, and time again Yosef said Loi mitan aleph, and under all circumstances, even eventually thrown into jail. You want to know what Yosef's oiftu was? Let me tell you something pelagic. We all think that Yosef, his oiftu was that on that day after day after day, he kept on saying no. And even on that day, when he got all excited, he still said no. That was the moment of his supreme victory. It's a mistake to think that. You want to know what the victory was? Not just that. That was the beginning of the victory. The Rambam says, and here's the introduction to this vart. The Rambam says that if a person does a mitzvah and he's mischaret on the mitzvah, regrets, right? He loses the mitzvah.
Completely?
Yeah, he loses the schar. It's no longer associated with you. Somebody was telling me just a few hours ago that he was doing chesed with somebody, and he started regretting. He said, "Don't you dare regret what you did, because then this is what's called, we say in Meir v'hoser sotay milfanenu u'ma'acharenu." What do you mean ma'acharenu? After you do a mitzvah and you beat the satan, you know what the satan does? Should have never done it. After Yosef ran out of the room, and Eishes Potiphar accused him, and he was thrown into jail for 10 years. He was rotting in jail. If Yosef HaTzadik would think to himself, what did I do? I ran out of the room. I should have stayed there. I wouldn't have to be in jail now. He would have lost the schar. For 10 years he sat in jail and he said, I did the right thing, and if I had a chance, I'll do it again. For 10 years in the Tvisa, he was constantly, the woman tried to make me do an Aveira, and I was strong and I didn't, and I don't regret it for a second. I can sit rotting in jail and I still did the right thing. That Kedusha and that determination, Zok the Medrash infused Klal Yisrael with a koyach that every Mitzri Shafroi, any Mitzri girl who tried to seduce a Jewish boy for the next 200 years couldn't do it. Yosef Godar Atzmai Min Ha'erva V'Nigdru Kol Yisrael Al Yadoi. So whatever mistakes they did make, and it says they were Oived Avodah Zarah, and they had other things that they did wrong, but Ein Zach, to assimilate and to be involved with Mitzrisha ladies, nope. That was the energy of Koch. So says the Zera Shimshon, we are called Tzoyin Yosef. He was Roya. He was really Eile told us Yaakov Yosef. If not for the fact that Yosef was Goda Atzam and Erva, Klal Yisrael would have been mitbolel. Is that what it's called? Assimilate? Totally hitbolelut. Would have been a total assimilation with the Mitzvah. Why not? They're the master's wives, and there's Froen and this, whichever doesn't want to move up in society. Name, they didn't do it. Why? Because of Yosef. Zog the Zera Shimshon, this is why the Eibishter sent Yosef at Tzaddik there, Sholach lefonav ish le'eved nimker Yosef. Yosef physically got all the money of Mitzrayim. He was kaina the Mitzrayim as avodim, and berochnius he infused Klal Yisrael with a koyach that they shouldn't be nichnas into the deepest levels of tumah. V'oid yuvan lefiza kesher haposik v'hi nefesh yoytze yerech Yaakov shivim nefesh v'Yosef haya b'Mitzrayim. It says, the pasuk zogt, he kick around over here in the pasuk, v'hi kol nefesh yoytze Yaakov shivim nefesh v'Yosef haya b'Mitzrayim. What do I care Yosef haya b'Mitzrayim? What do I need to know that for? Kol Shivim Yosef is part of the Shivim Nefesh. Says the Zera Shimshon, Darminim b'Medrash Shemos Hasratim Huskru Kan Al Shem Geulon. It says Reuven Al Shem the Geula, Shimon Al Shem the Geula. But you know why? Where is the Geula? Who says it? Maybe they're going to get lost. Who says they're going to get out? You know how I know they're not going to get out, says the Zera Shimshon? Because Yosef Haya b'Mitzrayim. He was there first. He was there to pave the way. He made Mitzrayim like a cocoon, so that when Klal Yisrael would be there, they would not lose their identity. You know why the Shivim Nefesh stayed Shivim Nefesh? But on the one hand, kidei lishleit alem v'lahachlish koyach atuma. They should be machlish the tumah. What's going to happen if they're going to become tamei v'hefirus amila? They didn't do bris milah, Rabbi Isai. They messed up on a lot of things, but they didn't live with the ish. They were not metama themselves with the goyim. V'adarabah. Hey, right, Mishum Hachi v'Yosef haya b'Mitzrayim. Sharei kol hashivim u'mois bo'u l'sham. All 70 nations were there. V'harav, and they were all hungry, and Yosef gave them all food. Do you know what that means? That means that every nation in the world that didn't have food, their source of life became Yosef HaTzadik. The Zera Shimshon writes in the next piece, Ve'efsher shemetam ze lomdu Gavriel shivim loshen. It's for this reason, possibly, that Yosef was shoylet in every one of these 70 languages. Afapi asher tzarich limud ela loshen Mitzri. What do you have to teach him more than Mitzri? Kedei ledaber in Paroi. The answer is, kidei, that he should know every one of their languages, be mashpia on them, and therefore be shoylet over every single nation in the world. Go back. V'Yosef sholet al kulam k'moishe sholet al Mitzrayim v'kofam lamul. We talked about this 2 weeks ago. They came to complain to Paroi. Why? Because you know what Yosef said? Yeah, you want food? Macha bris milah. What? They went to Paroi, they said he's meshugeh.
You'll make it start. What are you going to bagels and that?
Yeah. Bagels Deluxe would make a lot of money there, yeah?
He's not here.
Yeah, it's by the Rebbe Karastir. Okay. So that's right. Kedei lahachlish koyach haklipa shelahem umaoz kona kol Mitzrayim vekol hashivim umois loy le'avodim. They were all his avodim. Kulam, everybody oizen shamas. Yosef HaTzadik was like an Adam Harishon. Yosef HaTzadik, it says that Tzelem Elokim is the bris milah. Yosef HaTzadik was such a shoylet in this world that all of the 70 Lashonas were under his shlita. He was really Melech HaOlam. Like what we talk about a Mashiach Shel Yosef, one that brings a redemption, one that brings as machshir the world, so that afterwards we can have Mashiach ben David come. That was the power of Yosef in Mitzrayim. Yosef prepared Klal Yisrael so that they should be able to be redeemed and they should be able to make it out. This is the koyach of Yosef HaTzadik. Not only that, he made sure that anybody who gets shefa and ashpa from him has to have a bris milah, the orla, the tumadika orla, which came out. You know when the orla came, Rabbi say?
After the fact.
After the chet. We always say, when did Adam sin? During Sheish Yemei Abriya.
3 hours before.
He was in middle of the 6 days of creation. It's like lo yaleinu, a woman who's pregnant and smokes or drinks, she's going to hurt the embryo. Why? Because you're bringing that poison into your body. The baby's in your stomach. When Adam Arishon ate from the Eitz Hadas, he was still in Gan Eden. It was still during the 6 days of creation. By him sinning, then he actually made a change in himself. That's where the Orla came from. So the Orla was a kilko that had happened physically because he had just physically been made that day. So not only was he chayta, the chayta sprung up in a sense on his body. It showed the mokam atayva that he gave into his guf when he wasn't supposed to. So when it says he was created b'tzelem alekim, was without that foreskin, without the Orla. Yosef HaTzadik says, you're going to get hashpah from me, es alekim ani yoreh. I only am mashpia from the Eibishter. He's the one who's peiser chaloimus. That's why the midah of Yosef is called Yesoid. For those of you who learn a little bit of Pnimius HaTorah, in state, what's the midah from Yesoid? We say every day by davening. L'chashem ha'gedula v'ha'gevura v'ha'tiferes v'ha'netzach v'ha'hoid ki chol b'shamayim uva'aretz. That's the midah of Yesoid. Ki chol b'shamayim. Everything that's in heaven is ba'aretz. That's the mid of hashpo. That's the mid of Yosef HaTzadik. That's the mid of Yesoid. If you want me to give you food, you need to look heavenly. You can't look avia basar v'dam and oral. I'm not being mashpia to you. When Yosef did that, he was misakein that Klal Yisrael should be able to be in a place that no matter how tummy they become, we shouldn't get lost. That's called Tzoin Yosef. That's Eila told us Yaakov Yosef. V'anan kai melon masha kona eved kona rabbi. V'lechein achaf im achar kach ha'mitzrim kona Yisrael avodim machmas masei moroyim. Even though Klal Yisrael was nimkar over to Mitzrayim because of their bad deeds, but still nisharm knuyim li Yosef. They remained Yosefs. That's what it means. V'Yosef. That's why it says shivim nefesh v'Yosef hoya b'Mitzrayim. Now, Oy Bazoi says the Zera Shimshon. Let me answer my questions. Why was Yosef promoted to be the king? Wasn't there a gezerah that said an eved cannot be a king? Yosef was an eved. So Paroi had said, he's not an eved. We'll make him king. Now he was nischadish gezerosov. You know what he did? He reinstated the gezerah that an eved can't be a moilach, can't be a leader. So therefore he wanted to pull the rug away from Yosef's legitimacy. Says the Zera Ma'ata Nachsel in Yonenu. Here comes the Zera Shimshon's Einfall. Now, with this introduction, let's answer all of our questions. What's something gefragt? We asked in the beginning, what do you mean nischadish gezerah Yosef? You made gezeras. What do you mean Hashaloi yodas Yosef? Hashaloi zochares Yosef? What is it going to help? You do remember him, you don't remember him, you don't remember. Everybody remembers him. The Teretz is the Zera Shimshon. That's not the subject matter here. Avadi, he remembered him. The question was, the only reason that Yosef HaTzadik was able to be poyalois what he did was because he was the melech on Mitzrayim, because he instated. Unless you tell me he had no right to be a king. Unless you tell me that it was a mistake. For that, says the Zera Shimshon, nischadesh gzeirosav. He reinstated, as Meir called it, the old gezerah. Let's see it inside. Nachzo leman do amen nischadshik ze Yosef para yoda shemalchus shel Yosef nasan koyach li Yisrael lotzes mitzrayim. Paroi was no dummy. Paroi understood that Yosef's leadership was what provided Klal Yisrael the way to get out of Egypt. The loylias nitmeim sham. V'choshav machshavos. So for Paroi to be able to hold on to Klal Yisrael, he needs to be mevatel what Yosef had done, which means to delegitimize Yosef at Tzaddik's ownership, which means now we own you. And you're really ours. Kidei levatel zois hashlita shel Yosef ma'al hamitzriyim. He has to go to not just be mevatel Yosef's koyach over the Jews, over the Mitzrayim, and undo any legitimacy of Yosef. V'kvar yadua she'yakoseh b'nimusim Mitzrayim. It's written in the bylaws of Egypt. She'ein eved moilech. An eved cannot be a melech. V'Yosef hayanikra eved, like it says, eved lesar hatabochim. Ma also zeh melech. So what did he do? Chidesh hagzeiro rishoina she'ein eved melech. He reinstated the original gezeira. That's what he did. Levato. Whoever made him king, whether it was me once upon a time or whether it was somebody else, right now we were out of bounds for doing that. It was a mistake. We never should have given him the power that he had. He never, and if he did have the power, it was never a legitimate power. So whoever did this was wrong. It's against Egyptian rule. So therefore, Paro's, what do you mean, Asher? Avadi remembered Yosef. It's not like he pretended like he didn't know. Punkt verkehrt. He just claimed Yosef is an Eved. And if he's an Eved, he has no right to be the king. And if he was the king, he has no right to own anything that he did. So I'm taking it all away from him. So who does it belong to? Me. And if the Mitzrayim own the Jews, who do you belong to then? Me. And who do the Jews belong to? Me. That's what Paroi said. Ve'ein shlitas Yosef al Mitzrayim shum mamoshes. V'arekilu einoi. It's like it's not here. V'im lo yisholat Yosef al Mitzrayim. And now that he has no shlita, so therefore you're mine, says Paroi. And if you're mine, then you're staying here and you're not going out. Avozeh hoya to'us v'shtus. Finishes off the Zera Shimshon. The Nichim emes hayish Yosef haya Eved. That would all be true if he was an Eved. But how did Yosef come to Mitzrayim? Yosef was an Eved. Ki gonov ganavti mi'aretz ha'ivrim. I was stolen. They stole me. Ki gonav ganavti. K'moy shiro shebo aviv Achim b'Mitzrayim. When Achim went there, why was Paroi originally happy when the brothers came? Because they weren't avodim. So if they weren't avodim, he wasn't avodim. So that's what it means. Asher lo yoda es Yosef. He didn't want to remember the fact. They didn't want to recognize the fact that he was a free man who was just captured and never a legitimate Eved. Umasha so Paroi sholet. What Paroi did correctly. V'shlitos hayaka hoigen. V'amitzriyim heim avodim loy. V'zeu sha'omer osa atzma kilo lo yoda. He made himself like he didn't know. He made an amnesia of the fact that Yaakov was his father and his brothers all came down. V'loyo yamamin she Yosef ben Chayrin u'benoy shel Yaakov. Rakami shen yedei oisel b'cheskas eved. That's the Zog the Zera Shimshon, that's what's going on. That's what it means, Nischadshu Gzei Roisav. Dafman Vissen, it says, by Yitzias Mitzrayim, V'gam, what's the Lashon? V'gam es hagoy hazeh, Yodoy Ateda ki ger yezaracha be'eretz loy lohem. We're getting there. 1 second. Bris ben Abisorim. Yodoya Teda Ki Ger Yezer Acha Beretz Lo Lahem. Remember that there will be a ger. Va'avodam v'inoisam rabba me'oy shana. V'gam es hagoy asher yavdu don anoichi. Chazal say v'gam gam l'rabbis ha'arbo malchiyos. Also the arboim malchiyos, which means that every year when we're mechadesh these parshios, and here I'm coming to the end. This week we started Shoivavim, Shemos ve'era boy b'shalach Yisroi mishpatim. During these weeks, every time we read these parshios and we read about the kedushas habris of Yosef HaTzadik, and how he was able to protect Klal Yisrael, is misayrer during these weeks an opportunity for Yidden to be mischazik in the inyan of Koyach Kedusha. These weeks and these parshias carry the energy of Yosef HaTzadik that he inserted in Mitzrayim. And that's why there are places much over here, they say slichos, that people, some people have a minig, they learn in the morning extra limudim. Over here in China is 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. In the afternoon there's a tikkun. The olam looks to gather some of the koiches, because that energy of Yosef HaTzadik wasn't just then. As we read these parshas, we go through the koiches HaTorah that there is in these parshas. We have the koich to soak up that kedusha. That's a koich that's inserted in Klal Yisrael and sustained us in Mitzrayim. V'gam, even afterwards, during the Arba Malchus, that's unser koyach. The Bais Shalom soll helfen Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. Kol echad ve'echad, yochid ve'rabim. We should all be zoicha Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. Kimei tzeischam Mitzrayim, like we left off over there. Erenu niflois, and we'll be zoicha Be'ezras Hashem, the way we went out of Yena Golas to go out of this Golas b'mehera v'yameinu.